Hello guys, in today's video we will uncover very sensitive topic of fake love. Fake love may be a fraud because you can be a victim of fraud, right? Or you can jump into relationship without knowing what kind of undertaking you face and what kind of obligations you will take on yourself while you're sponsoring your spouse or common law partner. And the last thing is very important too. What if you enter the marriage which you think is legal, but is not recognized by the Canadian government?
Yeah, so let's say you found the love of your life and you would like to sponsor them to Canada. Well, keep in mind that by signing this financial undertaking for your spouse or common law partner, you actually give the Canadian government a legal and unconditional promise to financially support them over the next 3 years after they become permanent residents. And that's a serious matter because let's say if they go on welfare, the government social assistance, you will have to repay all the social assistance to the government over the next 3 years.
And what happens if, for example, you divorce the sponsored spouse in the meantime?
Yeah, that happens. And even if your relationship breaks, if you're divorced or break up with your partner, you will still remain liable. You cannot withdraw this undertaking after your partner becomes Canadian permanent resident, but you may potentially withdraw this obligation you're undertaking during the process, all the way until they become permanent residents.
Until they granted permanent residency. Yes, that's a very good point. It's a borderline, right? But don't forget, that's why it's very important to understand if you enter in actually true love relationship. And to be fair, we know that Canadian government has own verification and investigation methods, and definitely they try to see every marriage as fake marriage or fictitious marriage or marriage of convenience, another term. But what can you do to recognize red flags? What are those red flags? We discuss it all the time. Like, for example, we have once in a while, we have clients who call in our office and saying, well, I got into this relationship and it looks not right, but what would you recommend to check out and how you recommend to approach it? Well, first of all, we're asking people, why don't you check if everything they're talking about is money? No personal involvement, no personal relationship exchange, nothing like invitation to visit or desire to visit you, just money on the line. Obviously, that's very big issue. Another definite sign of fake marriage, or at least some manipulation from the intended spouse side, is definitely avoidance of personal contacts, like no relatives, no friends, something like that may raise your concern, especially if you're visiting that person in the country of origin and that person hiding you from everybody pretty much. I mean, that's something suspicious, right? And same goes with the background check. When person hiding something, they definitely trying to hide a lot and maybe not disclosing what the relationship they had before, where they coming from actually, because you may meet them, let's say, in the beach somewhere on vacation, and that may lead somewhere, who knows. But if you're really into it and want to sponsor someone, well, you have to be very careful, because Canada is attractive for people to sponsor loved ones, and the government of Canada has an excuse. They definitely work with multiple cases of frauds and marriages of convenience. So we describe those cases as red flags, but what else people have to keep in mind?
Yeah, well, thanks, Dr. Alex. Sometimes your relationship is real, but it will still not be recognized by the Canadian government for the purposes of immigration. So, for example, marriages so-called proximal marriages are not recognized. Proxy marriages are marriages where either you, like the spouse or husband, either of you are not physically present at the ceremony.
Yeah, and actually, it's kind of interesting. We had a story like this because it's a new legislature, by the way. Before 2015-16, it was possible to sponsor the spouse if your marriage was conducted by proxy. And especially, it's a part of life. People talking about this marriage by proxy a lot in the Middle East, in Africa, in certain faith where actually it's okay, and it's normal for that culture. But it doesn't mean that cultural inheritance can work in Canada. So be careful when you approach the case of sponsorship and you think, oh, it's okay, they have to understand my background. No, they don't. Government of Canada very adamantly prevented people from sponsoring spouses if marriage was conducted by proxy.
Yeah. Also, religious marriages are
Mhm.
not recognized by the government, by the Canadian government. Yeah, if you want your marriage to be recognized for immigration, it must be registered with some civil government authority. And religious marriages happen a lot, especially in Eastern countries
Or
even,
Eastern Orthodox
yeah,
Church countries where Eastern Orthodoxy, like Greece or Russia or other countries where this is very popular and the priest is conducting the marriage. And we're talking about same situation probably across the board. But if the state is separated from church, and that's pretty much what we have around the world, definitely religious marriage is not recognized. But to be fair, in Canada, some priests in some churches they carry the power of marriage commissioner, and if that case, well, you have to ask if the priest will have that power, and then the marriage in a church will be accompanied by the civil ceremony of signing the documents for the state. So it's very complicated. What I'm trying to say, and what Yulia emphasized very skillfully, we definitely want you to be safe. And I think you have one more interesting
yeah,
prevention factor.
exactly. And to add to that, it's great that you have traditions and you follow some religious ceremony for your marriage, but in this case, just please make sure to register your marriage with the government authorities as well. And yeah, another marriage which is not recognized by the Canadian government is polygamous marriage. So if you have few wives or husbands, well, Canadian government doesn't recognize that. There are some countries in the world which recognize these sorts of marriages, like Saudi Arabia, Qatar, or some African countries. But in Canada, only the first wife would be recognized.
Well, actually, we have a joke about it, right? We're talking about pick the right one, pick the best one. And it is a bad joke, of course, because obviously you're in love with all you ladies, I guess, if you have power and ability and means to support all your families. And it's a different culture. But government of Canada clearly recognize only one marriage between two people. And definitely in this case, we're talking about only one spouse you can sponsor in your life simultaneously, of course. And in this case, I think to underline what we just said, uh, be safe by educating yourself before you jump into this sponsorship process. It's a very significant step in your life, not only because you committed to the person you sponsor, but because you're responsible before the government by undertaking you sign. So, with this, I think we want to wish you love. We want to wish you all the best and happy marriages, happy relationship, and don't forget to subscribe, to like our video, and
See you in our next videos.